right after we recorded our best rosters in the NFL, and I put the Detroit Lions at number one, in part because once again they've got this extremely deep offensive line, and they only have to replace one starter on the O line, and they're doing great. Frank Ragnow retires at the age of 29, one of the best centers in the NFL. It's a quote early retirement for an NFL player who's in his prime, but Ragnow has battled a ton of injuries over the last couple of years. Battled admirably, by the way. It's not like
Yeah.
his play really dropped off, but you made the point, which was a really good one on Twitter. Was this a bomb dropped on Detroit? Was this a surprise, or how much did they know? I'm always fascinated by that. How much is the player communicating, especially before free agency and before the draft? How much did the Lions know that Ragnow was thinking about this?
Yeah, and it sounds like they were at least, aware that this was a potential outcome or even a likely outcome. They did draft multiple offensive linemen in the draft. One of them, I think, is probably going to be fairly instrumental in trying to replace Frank Ragnow. So, yeah, I don't think it was a bolt from the blue. Maybe they would have been hoping they could avoid it and keep him around and keep him going longer. But certainly, I think they were at least prepared for the idea that this might be a thing.
So yeah, maybe is it Tate Ratledge, their second round pick, who's a guard, potentially getting like he was snapping a little bit at the combine. Maybe he gets the first crack at center, but it leaves two questions on the offensive line for Detroit, which is center and right guard now. Whereas again, last year at this time, you could argue they have four above average to elite players on the line with like one question mark, and that was it. And they've had one of the better offensive lines in the league for the last 3 or 4 years. So it is a blow for Detroit up front.
It's a huge blow. Yeah, I mean, I think we tend to think of Ragnar's one of those players, I think, that tends to be thought of as sort of, the injury prone. You're missing him a lot anyway. But actually, you look, I mean, the last time he missed a lot of time was 2021, right? That season he barely played. But the last 3 years he's played, averaged over 1,000 snaps when you include or just look at the regular season. So he's basically been there for the entire time, and he's battled through these significant injuries. Like that run he had where he could barely move on like two busted feet, ankles, and was still playing at an incredibly high level. Like remarkable performance from him. And yeah, he's been one of the best centers in the NFL throughout his entire career. Unfortunately, another one of these Detroit Lions, very different reasoning, I think, but they've now had, Barry Sanders, Calvin Johnson, and Frank Ragnow, like elite players for them, retiring kind of at their peak. I think all of them? No, did Calvin Johnson last beyond 30? But like Barry, I think was 29 when he quit. Ragnow is 29 when he's gone. Like they've had these players not able to keep going at their peak for as long as they should have had them. And now, yeah, well, basically it makes me right? You had the Lions ahead of the Eagles in your roster rankings. It was
I would
ridiculous at
now.
the time. It's even more ridiculous now they don't have Ragnow. You were wrong.
I'm now dropping. I have to drop the Lions. Some of this is noisy, but I wanted to highlight it anyway. Nate Tice, somewhere on his Twitter timeline, has the EPA on-off splits for Frank Ragnow. Again, these are noisy numbers, as in they might tell a story in a very small sample size, but it doesn't mean it's going to be the story going forward. But now we have, because there are confounding variables, right? And so the on-off splits were like Lions best offense in the league. With Frank Ragnow, they fall to like 20th, whatever, without him. But now we have that plus the coordinator questions. It's just a little extra unknown, question mark, uncertainty, however you want to position it, for the Lions, who I think remain in really good spot, a really good spot. Would I keep them as the number one roster? Still, probably. But yeah, when you talk about a starting five on the offensive line, I always look at, if you have one question mark out of five, like you're among the best in the league. Once you get to two, it's a little bit riskier. So they're still in a really good spot, but it's a blow for Detroit.
Yeah, it is, and they're still a great roster, right? I'm being kind of facetious with the stuff before. They're still in really good shape, but they do have some questions now heading into this season, and some of this is work they can still do. There's veterans out there that could potentially upgrade either line, edge rusher, or offensive line now, just to add some contingency, and they've shown a willingness to do that kind of thing in the past. Um, at all stages of the development, like they're good at building in contingency rather than, throwing all of the chips down on one hand. So this probably isn't the final Detroit Lions roster heading into the season, but they've now got work to do in terms of we only really have one proven edge rusher in Aiden Hutchinson. We've now got multiple spots on the offensive line, which has been a huge strength of this team. You know, top 2, top 3 offensive line since over the last few years since the Lions have been good. They've now got multiple spots on that line that are at least question marks. And then you're looming over all this, you have the 2 coordinators thing, right? The fact that they lost both coordinators this offseason. I mean, there's nothing they can do about that one, but that's now 3 potential question marks for this team that, expects to be a contender again, expects to be one of the best teams in the NFL. Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.